What's up, guys? WILLpower
All right.
podcast. We're here with Dr. K.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Lee Swisher McKee. I'm going to start with describing my son. His name was Jonathan. And I'm going to use the word extreme a lot to describe him because, to be very honest, I've never met a person like him. And he was just extreme in everything he did, extreme in life, extreme in death. I would describe him as he just had this like insatiable appetite for adrenaline, freedom, adventure. He was always on the go, pushing the limits everywhere and making my life difficult because I would have to chase after him, and it was hard to keep up with him, to be honest. He is also extremely persistent, annoying sometimes, argumentative. So he had these pink socks. He would wear them with anything, and he didn't care like if they were like girly and pink. He wanted to support breast cancer. I'm not really sure why, but he wore those pink socks a lot, and maybe he possibly got fun of that, but he didn't care. He was going to wear his pink socks and support breast cancer. One of his friends later described my son to me as, he said he didn't take shit from anyone. He knew how to stand his ground. But from my perspective, I thought it was a great quality, and I thought actually it would serve him well in his life. But again, unfortunately, I think it actually might have, in the end, possibly had something to do with his death. He was pretty good at sports. He played a lot of sports. He started playing football when he was really young. I mean, I want to say like second grade or something like that. So he knew the game. He was pretty good at it. He wasn't his favorite game, but he was good at it because he was a big guy, very strong. I used to call him my little He-Man.
He looks like
He really liked the fast sports. He liked wakeboarding, skiing. He liked fishing and the great outdoors. Loved snorkeling. But he was good at football and baseball also. He did not like school. He thought of school as prison. I think he liked recess and maybe lunch, gym class maybe too, but actually very smart. But he did have some form of dyslexia, which made reading difficult, and we would have to spend a lot of time on, if it involved reading, it would take a long time for him to process that. And after a long day of school and sports, it was challenging to get through that, but he did reasonably well in school despite that. I just like to take some time right now to tell two stories. He's in fifth grade. It's winter time. We go to this farm that has this really huge hill, and it's icy out too, so the hill is really slick. And somebody had built a ramp on the hill, and so he would like take a running start and just fly down the hill, fly off the ramp, do somersaults off the ramp, slide into the fence, and he would just get up laughing and think that was amazing. And he was there with his cousins, and he was trying to get them to do it too, but they wouldn't do it. They're like just kind of sitting like, well, yeah, I don't know about this. And he, just kept doing it by himself. And I was trying to get them to do it too. I even did it. I'm like, it's not bad. It's fine. You'll be fine. You can just go like around the ramp. And finally, he did get them to try it, and they did have fun eventually. But that would be his life, doing crazy things and trying to get people to do these crazy things with him. And his cousins now say that their favorite, they don't really necessarily have a favorite memory, but just that he always brought the fun and the action, and he got them out of their comfort zones, and they always had more fun than they thought they would. So that was one. And then the other one kind of like is a struggle that he had. He was this big kid, and for some reason, people would always want to put him in place, like, because he was kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't really say he was like a tough guy, but he knew how to stand his ground. Let's just say that, like his friend said. So there was this little boy. He was little, and Jonathan just really bothered him. There was something about Jonathan that he just didn't take a liking to. So he was always poking him in the stomach, kind of like the Pillsbury Doughboy, like just kind of like a little annoying little poke in the stomach. Like, all right, you might be bigger than me, you might be better at sports, but you're chubby too. So, and I'm not chubby. It really, really bothered my son, and he would tell the boy to, stop doing that. He would tell the teacher, he's poking me, etc. And one day he just had enough, and he told the boy, he said, if you poke me again, I'm punching you. And the boy immediately poked him, and Jonathan punched him in the stomach very hard. Boy fell on the ground, was crying. Jonathan got in trouble, and he was really mad about that. And he's like, I was following the rules. I told the teacher, I was telling him to stop, but he wouldn't stop. So I'm like, well, those are rules, can't punch people. And he said, yeah, but that worked. The boy stopped punching me. I'm like, I know, but is what it is. And that was always like a fear of mine. I always felt like that was going to, get him in trouble because, he did kind of get picked on, not a lot, but he would be picked on for his size. And it seemed to always like end in something physical. And, I worried that someone would actually get hurt one day. So now we're in 7th grade, and I would say, from my perspective, it just seemed like normal middle school stuff. I went through these things. My daughter went through these things. Just, friends group changing. His friends from elementary school were sort of becoming like the popular kids, and he wasn't really totally fitting into that. And I know he was upset about a few things on occasion, that he wasn't included in a few things. And he was like in love with this girl, and she only liked him as a friend. And his best friend from kindergarten, he did really well in football. He started most of the games, and he had a lot of game time. So that was an accomplishment. The only problem was that there were some guys that were not happy about all the game time he had. And it was just my observation, my opinion, my observation, a couple comments that my son made to me, that made me feel that maybe they were a little bit jealous about the time he was getting in the games. But overall, I felt like things were going okay. I did go to his conferences, and I'll get into that later. And I'll never forget that one of the teachers said that if she had to describe Jonathan in one word, she would describe him as confident. So, I thought, oh, he's going to be okay, he has these problems, but he's a really confident person. And, I worked through my stuff. My daughter worked through her stuff. We'll work through this stuff too. So it's November 13th, 2014. This was his last day. The The day started out perfectly normal. That's the day that he died. Um, Unbeknownst to me, the previous Friday, um, some kids were calling him penis in Chinese. And when he found out what that meant, he went to the vice principal's office and he was going to report them, whoever they are. But the vice principal wasn't there. So he came back and they devised a plan, him and the guys, that instead of Jonathan telling the vice principal, because they didn't want to get in trouble, they were going to pay Jonathan $5, and then they were going to let Jonathan pinch a finger with some type of shop device. I don't know what, but like some tweezer or something like that. And they all agreed to this. On Monday, that's what happened. They gave him the money, and he pinched their finger. And they all decided we're even now, and we're okay with this. But when they got home, somehow the parents found out about it, and the parents called the school, and then they all got in trouble. And I got a call on Wednesday, the day before he died, and the vice principal told me what had happened. And so we had to talk about it with Jonathan later that day, just like your normal kind of conversation. You know, we've talked about this before, how you're supposed to, you know, talk to the teacher, talk to the principal. You're not supposed to use physical
Yeah.
violence, whatever. And he said, yeah, but, you know, if I would have told you, you'd have told the parents, and then I would have just gotten in more trouble. Like that wouldn't have ended it. They would have just bothered me more. And if I told the vice principal, then they would just get mad that I told on them. And so, you know, my way actually worked. And I said, yeah, I mean, it did actually kind of work, but, you know, now you have a detention. Now you're going to have to do it. So rules are rules. You know, we've already talked about this. And he said, all right, okay, well, I'll do the detention, but I just want to remind you that my way worked. I'm like, all right, well, you have a detention anyways. So that day, that morning, November 13th, started out just like a normal day. The night before, actually, him and his sister, they were just like laughing, watching Dumb and Dumber. I felt like everything was fine. We had talked about things. He was over it. He had done his homework. They were having fun. It was a good night. The next morning, he just took a shower, grabbed a granola bar. He was wearing shorts that day. He was wearing his Nike shorts and up north Michigan shirt. And we laughed about that. I said, I think it's about time to start wearing sweatpants. And he said, Mom, I'm actually sweating. I'm hot. And I'm like, okay, but it really is getting cold out there. And he just said, all right, well, love you, Mom. And I said, love you, Bud. And he walked out the door. And I had a great day that day. We were going to be closing on a house that I considered to be my dream house. I was in a really good mood. It was a beautiful day. Sun was out, crisp fall day. My practice was doing really well. I was going to be expanding my business, adding holistic medicine to my practice, and I was having a fabulous day. I finished up early with my patients, and my daughter was at the gym. I met her there, and I did a quick little workout. Then I saw a friend, and we started chatting, and I headed home. I was running a little bit late, about 20 minutes late, and I had Jonathan's conferences. So I didn't like stop in the house. I just dropped my daughter off and I said, I'm going to run to conferences and call me if there's any problems. And she never called because she didn't know that my son was outside. Um, they had like had like different schedules. She was on the swim team. Like in high school, he was in middle school playing football, and they had just finished their sports, and he had started up taekwondo, and she had started some other sports, so they weren't really that familiar with like what schedules they had at the moment. So when he wasn't home, or she didn't think he was home, she was just like, "Oh, I guess he had taekwondo today," and I didn't get a phone call from her, so I thought, everything was fine. Um, my husband had called him while he's walking home from school, and he said it was a normal phone call. So there was like no reason for us to believe that, anything was wrong. My daughter was on the couch by herself, and so I asked, "Hey, where's Jonathan?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. I thought he had taekwondo." I'm like, "No, not today." And so I walked around a little bit. He used to always play jokes on me, and sometimes he would just like hide behind a door, and I fully thought they were both playing a joke on me, and he was going to jump out at me to like scare me. But that didn't happen. So then I called my husband and I said, "Do you know where Jonathan?" And he said, "No, I don't know." And then I started kind of worrying. And so I opened the back door and I looked outside and I saw him laying on the ground, face down. And I thought he was playing a joke on me. But as I walked towards him, I saw that there was a lot of blood and that he wasn't moving. So when I got to him, I turned him over, and I immediately could tell that he was sad. And so I felt for a pulse. Sorry, I felt for a pulse. There was no pulse, and his eyes, that would normally be these twinkling blue eyes, that would be just full of mischief and love. They were dead. So I knew he was dead. We're gonna call 911, and I yelled to my daughter to call 911, and I was just kind of like sort of like shaking him, like, all right, this is not over. This is not over. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. But at the same time, like this, like yeah, I would describe it kind of like a smoky darkness started surrounding me, and like I started to panic, and I just started like freaking out, screaming, and I don't know how to really describe this, but I felt like if I got through the smoke, he was somewhere there in the smoke. Ambulance and the police got there. My neighbors had also heard me screaming, so they came over, and they had also called 911. So when 911 got there, the paramedics started working on him, and the police had questions for me. They were asking me these questions like, how did you find his body? How was his head angled? Where was the gun, etc. And I was getting really frustrated with them because, first of all, I couldn't remember, and secondly, I just wanted to like be with my son. And the paramedics were working on him. They were using those paddles, and his body was convulsing, and one of his shoe fell off. And I kept thinking that I had to put the shoe back on. I was really getting upset that his shoe wasn't on, and I kept saying, "I need to put his shoe on. I need to put his shoe on." And they're like, "Ma'am, we have to talk to you. We have to ask you these questions." And I was kind of getting mad at them because I don't know. I just wanted to be with my son, I guess. And finally, they were putting him on a gurney and putting him in the ambulance. And I was begging them, just let me go, just let me go. And they let me go. And my neighbor drove me and my daughter the, um, to the hospital, and we were just praying in the car. We, I really did feel like God was with us, but at the same time, I also felt something kind of evil too. And I actually heard this like evil voice say to me, well, now you only have one to pay for college. And I like mentally just shoved that away from me and really tried to focus on this like positive feeling that like I felt like was God. So I thought that when we got to the hospital, they were going to be hooking him up to like some type of life support, and that it was going to be a tough time, but we were going to get through it and he was going to be okay, because in all actuality, his wound didn't look that bad to me. Now, of course, I don't really know. I'm just looking at this casually, but um, I didn't think it looked that bad. And I also truly believed in miracles. So I'm like, maybe it's been a while, but he's going to pull through somehow. I don't even know how, but it's going to happen. But when we got to the hospital and I, told him I was there looking for my son, and they looked his name up and they're like, I don't see him. And my neighbor said, go ahead and sit down. I'm going to figure this out for you. It's going to be okay. But then she came back and she gave me a big hug, and she said that, I'm really sorry. Your son has died. And I just felt like, literally, I felt like lightning struck me. And it was just like, I immediately it was like a crack through my body. My entire body cracked in half, and it was like the lights went out, turned into like this dark hole, and I just like was just falling through this hole. And I kept like kind of in my mind, I was like grabbing hold of the walls, like trying to like stop myself, or uh I don't know, just trying not to fall. But the walls were made of smoke, so that didn't happen. And so I fell at the bottom of the hole and I broke every bone in my body, and it was excruciating pain, and I was just lifeless. And at that point, I just felt like I don't want to live. I was lifeless. Do you have any questions for me at this point, or?
When you said about the falling through the tunnel,
Yeah.
I've read about like hell and stuff, and it feels like it's like almost like you got shot to hell in a sec. Not because your fault, but just lifeless, as far away from the light, because it's like so hard. I think about my brother a lot when I think of Jonathan. Yeah, the similarities, like, they both have those beautiful blue eyes.
Yeah.
They're both a little bigger. I used to, when I get mad at my brother, he'd get mad at me, or he'd be like joking, but I'd be poking him because he got a barrel.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you said that, it's like, because you don't know, like, I just sometimes think it's whatever. I'm like, oh, he's fine, but little things like that really get to people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody knows, have that awareness and that knowledge also of like, what you might be doing. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that. I never really it's very interesting to me because obviously you would be thinking of your life and how the story affects your life, and you'd think of your brother, but I never thought of your brother, so I think that's kind of interesting. But in fact, they
Yes,
kind of do have that, like,
that's what I like.
I think that Alex sort of has like a little bit of a tough guy attitude too. Maybe you
Oh yeah,
don't,
but
but
I relate to
I do a little
myself
bit.
in his situation as well. Just with like being in middle school, getting chirped,
Wait, what
always
was
being
that?
in
I'm
the.
sorry.
I like relate to Jonathan myself as well. Just being
Oh,
in middle school and having like all the same desires, being like kind of extroverted, like very outgoing and not extroverted, extremist, like almost like an extremist. So I relate to that, and it's so sad because like mistakes can just happen like that easy, and that's why I tell my brother every day. I'm like, bro, don't drive fast, and he's like, okay, okay, I won't, and that's what you said too when you asked Jonathan if everything was gonna, if he was okay to be alone, and he's like, yeah, yeah, because they, and I'm asking my brother, I'm like, okay, okay, but you just never know, you know,
yeah.
um,
Thank you for
but like,
reminding me of that. I had a talk with them about responsibilities, and they both promised me that they were going to be good. They were going to be fine without the babysitter. They were too old for that. And that was their first day alone without the babysitter. And in fact, the babysitter had stopped by the house and picked up a check on the porch. And she had thought about going, like knocking, saying hi to Jonathan, and to my daughter, Jessica, also. But said, no, they're big kids now. Like, I'm going to trust them. They said they were ready for this. And so she just picked up the check and left also. So I wasn't just another, I was late. My daughter was there. The babysitter was there, but yet this happened. But
I have
so
a
that's
question
interesting to me.
too.
But you
Did
you
you,
identify with Jonathan because of his extremist
yeah, and just being
like
like you could tell he loved life. Just
behaviors.
looking at the guy's eyes, he has like you could tell he's just so full of life. You know what I mean? So for it to be
Yes.
taken away by mistake is so sad. But like you said, and we'll get into like the dark smoke and stuff. Like I feel like God has a plan for everything, and I really hope that that's like the truth I try to find, or I feel like life's not even worth living. Because I want there to be something meaningful in life.
I certainly have come to the belief at this point that, we do come down to earth with a mission. There is a plan for us. And although it is very painful for me to accept that it was God's plan to only have Jonathan here for 12 years, kind of accepted that, much communication with him in the afterlife. And then I
And that's a
know
hard
that,
thing for
that
me
for
to
a fact,
accept.
based on things that I've gone through. But at this point, after 10 years, I've really worked through it. And, I fully do believe, even though it's been the most painful experience I could ever imagine, that it was meant to be for some reason. So,
That's
yeah.
that gives me a lot of like
Um,
faith.
my neighbor drove us home. By that time, several friends in the neighborhood had seen all the commotion, the ambulances and police cars, and they were calling and trying to find out what happened. And I had one of the friends come over, and I was talking to her, telling her everything that happened, and she was very upset, but she was in a better place than I was, obviously. So she was able to make the phone calls for me. She called my family. She called Jonathan's best friend's parents. She called my best friends, whoever was available at that time. I don't even remember. I think she might even call the school, even too. I can't remember. But anyway, she made the phone calls, and I just kind of like sat there. I mean, our family they were just in a state of shock, and we were just couldn't even believe it. Like, this is absolutely unbelievable to us. But also, in a lot of pain, and torture, like just actually feeling like physical torture. So my family came over and we just kind of like held hands and cried a lot. And I don't think we had gotten to the point where we could actually talk about him or talk about any memories or anything like that. We were just like crying and just like, I can't believe this. Um, this is horrible. And there were no kids there at that point, but my siblings, I have two sisters and a brother, and they had to tell their kids, and that was that was a really awful experience also. So finally, we were just completely exhausted. We went to bed. We didn't sleep at all. My daughter slept with us also. We just felt like we were in a nightmare. It just felt like um, I would describe it as some Freddy Krueger movie or something like that. Just like something absolutely horrible, um, that you just couldn't imagine that was like happening to yourself. Like you can have this completely normal life where you're just like this suburban mom driving your kids to sports and worrying about grades and college, and the next thing you're in a nightmare. um so the next morning my sister walked in the room and she was checking in on us, and she said, I want to tell you guys something. I woke up and I had this really bad headache, and I don't know how to describe this, but it's like I felt like Jonathan was talking to me, and he said, I want you to tell my family that it wasn't their fault. Like, and I said, well, what do you mean? Like, how did this happen? She's like, I can't describe it, but it's like he was there. Not like I could see him, but it's like I heard his voice, and he said, tell my family that it wasn't my fault. Now, I, of course, did blame myself. I wasn't home. I was late. I was talking to a friend. I didn't go in to check on him. Not only that, uh, his uncle owned a lot of property and they did hunting on the property and they had guns, and I was nervous about him having guns. So I thought they should have learned gun safety. And so my husband had bought this simple rifle and they had done, like, I don't know what you call it, like practice at the range, and learned about gun safety. And that had kind of been my idea, which my husband agreed with, but that was very you know how could I not blame myself? But of course my husband blamed himself because he wasn't there and he bought the gun, and my daughter blamed herself because she was home and she didn't know he was outside. So
Yeah. Everyone's gonna blame each other. Or
yeah,
themselves.
I mean,
Right?
yep.
Yeah.
So
Like, even when anything happens, you tend to blame yourself. Like, everyone. You're like, oh,
yeah,
only if I called a second later or a second earlier could have been this. God is doing his thing. We can't stop it.
yeah.
Right?
I mean, it is. I mean, it took us all like a really long time to, come to terms with that. But it's like you said, it's just natural human tendency when you're just trying to figure out what happened and you don't know what happened. Uh, you know, your brain is trying to tell you there has to be a cause. Like something impossible can't happen, so it must have been my fault. That's just like I think that's just sort of like
It's not your
how your
fault.
brain tends to work.
Yeah. And people need to realize, like, even if it not, but even if it was someone's fault, it's life. Like, you know how many times things just go wrong by accident. You know what I mean? And you're just trying to do the right
Yeah,
thing.
definitely.
You're like, let's go
Right.
target practice. He's a young boy that obviously wants to practice that. My brother does the same thing. Like everyone, you know. So you want to let a boy become a man as well,
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he was like, I'm not going to say the word proud of that, but like he loved the farm. He had, he was like, I mean, he could be very sensitive about things. I mean, obviously he was sensitive about the boy poking his stomach and um, whatever. But at the same time, I would always think in my mind, it would have been better if he had been born, if he would have been a Gen Xer where like boys could kind of be more boys, like you just sort of expected him to be like that. But it was, a challenge for him to behave and follow rules. Oh my God. Okay, like literally the painting just fell off, just fell on the ground. Okay, do you not find that a little bit weird?
Oh, I do. Because I'll tell you a story quick. I was with a girl, her husband died, and we saw, right when we were talking about it, shooting star. And said, "You'll always be my shooting star." And I
Oh my
told her,
God.
yeah,
That's so amazing. I love that.
it
Well,
is
what's
amazing.
even weirder is that I actually said to Jonathan, believe it or not, I said, give me a sign that you're with me and have the painting fall off the window. And the painting just, you like heard it, just fell off the window. So, I mean, he's with us, which I knew he would be, but I
Me
always love
too.
these confirmations. But thank you for sharing that story with me. I love hearing these
No,
kind of things. And no matter how many I hear, it always helps to have validations because it's just so crazy,
for sure.
And it's nice to know that other people experience them too. Because sometimes I feel crazy. So thanks for sharing that with me.
Same. But I don't think
So,
we're.
what?
I said, I don't think we're crazy. I think we're right.
I do not feel crazy at all.
No.
So I was just like in full
The bait.
blown blaming myself. My sister had walked in and she gave the message that Jonathan told her not to blame herself, and none of us were to blame, that he was ultimately taking responsibility for what he did. I should also mention that he had tried to call 911, which we would find out later. And because he called on his cell phone at that time,
This part
they
hurts.
couldn't track the number. So he wasn't able to communicate our address. And so they were asking him, where are you? What's the address? And he couldn't say it. But he had called 911. So he was saying that, he was responsible because he knew that he shouldn't have done that. He knew he wasn't supposed to take the gun out of the hiding place. And ultimately, he's one that did what he did. Whatever happened, we're still not sure. But he was telling us not to blame ourselves. But again, that was hard. Um, I had Jonathan's blood on my hands and all over my clothes. And I was just walking around like with my hands on my face. That was for the moment my connection. I didn't want to wash my hands, and my husband, that was upsetting him, and he kept telling me to wash my hands, but I'm like, no, this is it. This is all I have of him. He's gone, except for the blood on my hands, and they're also on my clothes. And to be completely honest, I still have those clothes with the blood on them. I don't do anything with them. They're just in a place. I don't look at them, but I never was able to wash those clothes or get rid of them.
I keep it.
That's Some people might think that's disturbing, but
Yeah, but
I
when I
can
was
do it.
reading it, I agree. Like even having the blood on your hands for like 2 days, that's what I would do too. It's just like makes you feel closer to him. You know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but it was extremely painful. Again, it was just the pain was so enormous that there was no place that you could really identify where the pain was coming from. I felt like my body was inside out, and that so painful that I didn't even sometimes think that my body existed. And I would have to like remind myself, like you're here, like touch my body and be you're on this earth still. That's the way it felt to me at the time. So we had to go to the funeral home to sort that all out, to get his coffin. And he didn't mean to be acting this way, but in my mind, he seemed like a used car salesman, and he was like he was trying. This one is biodegradable, and look at this, top of the line. And I just wanted to scream at him, like, why do I care? It's not going to bring him back to life. I
I
mean,
know.
it was all I could do not to start screaming at him. And it
Did you
just
scream at him?
seemed so like insane to me. What?
Did you scream at him?
I did not. I like kept it together, but in my head I was screaming, and I might have gotten a little snarky a few times, but like, who cares? Like, I don't care.
Who
Like,
cares? I think people are brutal
is that going to bring him
nowadays.
back?
They don't even think. People. They just think of themselves. It's so disgusting, bro.
I would definitely at least say it was inappropriate for sure. Reels, and this is one of the reasons why I'm talking about all this, and I wrote the book, was because I just think that grief is so painful that we don't talk about it. So a lot of people just don't know. They don't know like if they're hurting you or if they said the wrong thing. The guy probably just thought he was doing his job, but for me, like his comments were um, sick, almost disgusting. So in the end, we just ended up um, buying like this. It was very nice, but very simple wood casket, because I felt like if I really wanted to bury him anyways, I would bury him on top of a mountain. But we didn't really have that choice. So it was just my family and the cousins, which was extremely difficult for them. I mean, it would be for any child, but nobody wants to see their cousin who was like the spice of life in a casket. So my brother said, as a joke, to lighten the mood, he said, if anyone stubs their toe, that's a sign from Jonathan that he's with us. And we all kind of laughed about that because, I mean, who even comes up with something like that? But yet later, his son did stub his toe so badly that he cracked his toenail in half. And I mean, nothing could really take the pain away at that point for any of us. I mean, we were just on the start of this journey, but like for a moment, we were able to have like a little chuckle, and that was better. Um, but that was kind of the start of Jonathan sending hundreds and hundreds of signs. Some of them just little cute little things, some of them funny little jokes, and
I
some of
can I
them
tell you a
were,
story quick? I
yeah,
I was like something happened to me that I don't want to share about, but it was like a week ago. But I swear before it happened, I can't believe how spiritual things were happening. Like it was like Jesus was telling me like whatever he was telling me. And
So it was like you had like a message in your mind.
lots. I'm like, I'm not gonna talk, like, listen to God. That's what I was telling myself. I was like, it's probably not real. Um, and then something happened to me, and it was like the devil was right there.
The more things like that do happen, self, and you did just have a baptism. So, um, maybe that's why these things are happening to you.
And it's like surreal.
Possibly. I don't know.
There was like a couple that was looking at me, and I swear, when they were looking at me, they had their like hands behind their back and they're looking. I swear they're like 10 feet tall. Like Jesus Christ was in that couple. That's what I believe. But it was crazy surreal.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it is real, isn't it?
yeah, like it's surreal. And there's people that know more than us even that like are so connected with God that you can't even change them. They know the truth. And it's cool. And I'm on my journey to find the truth. I think
Yeah.
you're already found your, like, you've been doing amazing. You said you read 50 self-help books. You wrote your own book that I want to share if I can at the end, so
Yeah.
people can read that. And just even this conversation with me and you has changed my life a lot.
Oh,
Like you're making me realize a lot. So thank you.
well, I mean, it is my belief. I mean, there's many reasons why I've gotten signs and, what have you. But certainly, for a fact, I know that my son loves you and thinks you're amazing. And, um, either my son and God or my son or whoever, definitely like picked you as the person to be part of this experience. I mean, obviously, a lot of other things have happened to me, but um, it was kind of, he gave me the responsibility to make sure you got these messages, this message, the one I will talk about later, where I had the dream. For whatever reasons, I don't know how this will impact your life long term, but like you said to me, Mom, you have to tell him. You have to tell him that this happened. And sometimes I would be like in my mind, I'm just having a conversation with him. I'd be like, that's just crazy. He's gonna think I'm crazy. His funeral was beautiful. It was amazing. I never wanted it to end. Had it at our church. Um, I had a memory while we were there of his baptism, how you'd explain to a 4-year-old. And then we had the baptism. And when we were finished, Jonathan told the minister, it didn't work. I still have the devil in me. I'm still Mr. Trouble. And I had that thought in my head. I'm like, yeah, you did still have the trouble, and you really got yourself in trouble this time. And so I was just thinking about that during parts of the funeral. But his funeral was really nice. Um, we had the youth pastor do the sermon, and he just seemed to have a really good handle on Jonathan. And it was very soothing. And my brother and sisters had some amazing words to say about him. My husband and I went to bed and we didn't sleep, but we were just kind of like one person was like, "Oh, my son plays," they have recruiters looking at them and blah blah blah, and all I could think was, my son is dead, and it was just like another night where it was like a nightmare again. So that was just kind of like, that was the start of our life without Jonathan. And we were all three of us were at the bottom of the hole, and my husband never really wanted to get out of the dark hole. It would take a long time. It would take me getting out of the black hole. I wanted to get out, but I didn't know how to get out. I would try and not be able to. Um, we were just basically a mess. So we're just trying to get back to our normal lives as best we can. It's like, God gives us these struggles and to make us stronger or whatever. But that day also, there was an opportunity to get rebaptized. So we did so. And we just went on with our day, went home, just had like a regular day. And then that night we went to bed. I had this crazy dream where I was having like a really hard time getting to the DMV, and I finally was able to get there like 10 minutes before it was closing. So I was really excited. I needed to renew my license, and I pulled in, ran in, had my papers ready to go, and the person that was there, she looked at my papers and she just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't get your license." I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, why not?" And she's like, "You can't have one." I'm like, "Why can't I have one?" She's like, you can't have a license." I'm like, "I need a license. Like, I don't understand." And she just looked at me and she screamed at me, "You need to take a break from this job." And she screamed at me so loudly that I just woke up like startled. And because I do actually kind of believe in my dreams, I was seeing like how the brain was working, like just like all the axons and dendrites and messages back and forth. And
That's cool.
it was just, it was like really like fascinating.
What'd you see? Like
What did
anything
I
cool
see?
in the brain?
So, um, what did I see in my brain? So it
Yeah.
was interesting because it'd be like, and I don't even know why I'd be seeing this, but like if you were riding a bike, so there's like a bike riding in my brain, but it's showing me what part of the brain would be working if I was riding a bike. And then there was like an area where I was popping popcorn, and like there was like, this is what happens when you're popping popcorn. This is what happens when you're riding a bike. This is what happens when you're crying. And I was like understanding, like seeing, not just like reading about it and being like, oh, this happens in
Yeah. You were
your
seeing it.
hypothalamus or whatever. Like I'm looking at my brain and I'm seeing how it's working. And I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, like, how is this even happening? Like, what is going on here? This is crazy. And then the craziest thing was that in the middle of my brain, a flower started to bloom and the roots were pressing into my head. Like I could actually feel pressure. And then when I could feel that, then I started to kind of freak out and I said, stop. And then it stopped. Now, in my opinion, I feel like it was like that was like changing my brain a little bit in order to accept what happened to me next, because what happened to me next is kind of actually amazing. And I feel like, I don't know, God did this to me, angels, I don't even know. I don't know how this works. Nobody knows how these things works.
No.
But to me, if I had to analyze it, I would
Yeah.
say that I needed the space someplace in order to receive the next message. Slowly, I kind of became aware of this orange orb floating in front of me. And the orange orb traveled to the middle of the room. And then it turned into this blue orb that was bigger, kind of like this oblong. The orange one was like circular, like a globe. The blue one was kind of like it might look like a pupa of a butterfly or something like that.
Okay.
But then it started spinning really fast. So it was white in color. um, each episode would take about 5 minutes to get through. And um, I just found it kind of mesmerizing. Actually, I was just kind of like watching it. It was like kind of like watching, I don't know. It was very relaxing. And I wasn't really, whereas like when I was looking at the inside of my brain and I was kind of freaked out about it, like, how is this happening? In this instance, I just was sort of like enjoying it, like, oh, this is really cool. Um, then after about an hour and a half, that was happening for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Um, then it was like I was in this 3D IMAX movie. Do you know what those are?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a movie around you, and it was in 3D.
I like
So
moves.
um,
The chairs.
I
The,
first, first it was like I was like on Aladdin's magic carpet, and we were going through this like ancient village, and I was like, there was these like towers with turrets, and it literally looked kind of like Aladdin to me. Um, and I would be like up in the sky, then I would go down low and go around a corner, and like I have no idea why this was happening. I don't know what this was all about. But it was just super cool. And then I was skiing down a mountain, and like, but it was like this enormous mountain, and I was seeing like an avalanche on this side, and on the other side something else was happening. And then this is hard to describe, but it was like I was inside of a building, but the building was just made out of blueprints, and so I could see how the building was made. And after thinking about this now, like I said, I just felt like my brain was able to experience this because that flower had opened up a space in my brain somehow, energetically, not real. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But I didn't really actually have a flower in my head. Um,
No.
but it's
I
like
get
I
it.
did spiritually in some weird way. And later, much later, I would see a medium, and she said that Jonathan said that heaven was like Disneyland with a free pass, that you could just go on all the rides all day long. And so, he was on some Aladdin ride or something like that. I mean, I don't know this. I don't know any of this. It's just you try to come up with something to explain what's happening to you. So, anyways, that was going on for a while, and then I that all kind of like stopped for a second, and I was being pulled through a tunnel of stars, and I could actually feel like my head, like it's like I felt like it wasn't just like I thought I was being pulled. It was like literally like my body really could feel like tension. And I mean, I want to say that like my head even hit the headboard or something. Like I really felt something physical involved in that. And so there were stars surrounding me. And then I came out in to this field where I was surrounded by a circle of trees, and there were just like rainbow colored sunsets like all around me. And sometimes I would be, up in the sky looking at it, and sometimes I'd be on the ground, um, looking at the sunset from the ground. Like my position would kind of vary a little bit. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, my son just was there, like his big face in my face, like staring at me with this very like firm but loving kind of voice, like, I'm here. Like, this is real. This is my heaven. I'm showing you my heaven. And then an American flag was like flapping behind his back. And I don't think I've mentioned this, but he was very patriotic. And we were always having like arguments. He would tell me that he was going to join the army, and I would be like, no, you're not. And he'd be like, yeah, I am. And I would always think that one day I was going to come home and he was going to tell me, oh, I joined the army. And I'd actually have this like fear of that. Um, so that was just interesting to me that the American flag was in that. And of
I
course,
feel
I
like
can't
he's
prove
living
any
his
of this.
dream in heaven.
Right,
Like he's living his
exactly.
dream.
Yeah. And the funny thing is,
It's
I was like kind of obsessed with sunsets, and I would make the kids run outside. We had a perfect vision of the sunset from um, our driveway. So I was always like making them. They'd be like, "Mom, I'm doing something. I'm playing Xbox." I'm like, "No, no, you have to see this." And so I just always thought that was cool that sunsets were a part of his heaven, at least at that time. So that was one of my main worries. Like, where is he? Like, he's not with me. People say that he's in heaven. What does that mean? And he was showing me like, Mom, this is heaven. I am in heaven. You don't have to worry about me. I know you miss me. I know that, it's not okay, but I am in heaven, and this is my heaven, and it's amazing. So
wow.
that was my first one that definitely gave me the missing and the pain was still there, but there was some kind of like solid bit of peace in knowing for sure, as far as I was concerned, I was going to believe it. Now, could I have chosen not to believe that? Yeah, I could have been like, whatever, you're going psycho. That was a hallucination. But who would want to do that? Of course, you would want to believe that your son was in heaven. So that's what I did. So that
It's
was
just like
one.
it's easier to believe than not believe though. Like even Albert Einstein, let's say, like he believes in like the God of nature, let's say. It's like whatever your God is, your God is. But just everything's connected. So I just believe that everything's connected
Yeah,
as well like that. You know what I mean? And your spirit, your atoms, whatever it is, like it goes wherever you kinda wanna go. And if I feel like if you're like negative, maybe that's gonna be better. You're positive that, and I think everything just connects, bro. It's so cool.
well, and
Um,
that is actually something that how I visualize it actually, and I'm glad you brought up the word connected.
yeah,
I just feel like literally everything is connected, like every single thing that we do, every person in this world, we're just all like threads that make up this tapestry, and I feel like we're all connected by love. That's the way I see
me
it. Like
too.
love is the connection. But
Yeah.
we are all connected, and we're connected to people in the afterlife too. We're connected to heaven,
The
some
whole
more so
universe.
than others, but the
Exactly.
universe, yes, that's a great way of
Right?
putting it. Yeah.
I think this podcast made me believe in God more. Um, it's making me look at some of the bad decisions that I make on a daily sometimes, maybe check them. I have some bad habits that I'm not proud of. Um, but even more than the book, just this talking to you has been giving me so much, like, with everything, faith, wisdom, um, clarity. I don't know. Um, I want to now read into more. I have Jonathan on my desk right here, so he's just looking at me with the big fish. Um, but yeah, like it's just absolutely motivating what you went through and how you're still just standing strong. And I know you hurt every day, but you still decide to trust God and
Yeah.
move forward. And that's what gives me
I
more
mean,
belief. And for you to come on my podcast and everything connects, and then with the dreams, it's just like, wow. Um, you know,
It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, it's
it's
just
big
really
though.
amazing. It's incredible. It just makes you
Incredible.
believe that anything is possible. Like literally anything is possible. And those times in your
Exactly.
life where you think like whatever's going on in your life and you're like, well, this could never happen. That's just impossible. Just like he immediately said to me, like, oh, you have to get the book to him. And I'm like, he has 10,000 people in his lives
Oh,
and millions of
that's
followers. Like, how am I going to do that? I don't even know how would I do that. And he's like, you have to.
that makes me
And
so happy.
it happened. I know this sounds weird, and people are going to think this is weird when I say this. But truly, like, I know that, like, literally, Jonathan is your biggest cheerleader. Like, whatever, even if your life is not going properly, like, he is definitely like cheering you on, and he is a super motivated, persistent person, and he's going to make sure that things are okay eventually. So
Thanks.
I really truly believe that. Just
I can see
the
him
feeling that I,
looking at me saying, "You got this, Willie." I can see that.
yeah. I had really started kind of like trying to like work on myself at this point. It had been a couple of months and I was like reading all these books on grief and self-help books. And I was trying to do the things that were in these books. I had seen a couple of therapists. The therapists didn't work out at all for me. Uh, I saw an art therapist, music therapist, etc. And all these things might have helped like a tiny bit, but um, not very much. That I mean, I was like in so much pain that I was like, I need something big. Like this is not working for me. So my sister said, let's go to Sedona and it'll be like a good break. Anyways, it's beautiful there. And, they say it's like very spiritual there. I had been to Sedona before, so I already knew that, but and we're just going to have a girl weekend. Um, One of the things that we did was we went to this chapel that was in the rocks. I can't remember the official name. I want to say it was like Holy Cross in the Rocks or something like that. But essentially, it's just a chapel that's built into the rocks of Sedona in a canyon. You're surrounded by this beautiful canyon. And how I would describe the pain is that you just have constant thoughts in your head that almost feel like a hammer pounding in your head, and your body is inside out and it's so painful you want to scratch your skin off because you don't know how to deal with it. And so I actually was in a place where it had been long enough that I was dealing with that feeling that I was getting really exhausted, and I just didn't know how I was going to live my life that way. I was starting to get like really depressed that I wasn't going to make it, because even though I knew that my son was okay, he was in heaven, I was being tortured. So, and it was relentless, like every single day. So I was starting to get like really, like, I don't think I can make it. Like, I feel like I just want to be a homeless person and
Yeah.
just never deal with this anymore. So when I was in the chapel, I was just begging God. I was like, tell me what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. I've tried all these things and none of these things have helped me. And just tell me exactly what I need to do. I will do exactly what I need to do. Just tell me what I need to do. And in that moment, I felt this kind of like, the best I can describe it is like kind of like electricity sort of like going through my body, and it started like in my head and it just went down my toes. And as it went through me, I felt like no pain and I was at peace. And for, I don't know how long it was, it could have just been like a minute or two. Um, I, but I was like, oh, I can actually feel no pain. Like it is actually possible for me. And what that gave me was hope. Whereas I didn't have hope because the pain had lasted so long, I had kind of given up. And in that moment, I was like, I did have this tiny speck of hope. Like, okay, like it might be a long time from now. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I might be able to actually live in this life. Like, I might actually be able to have a life. And so, we did whatever we did during that day, whatever we did. And then we came back to the rooms. And it was kind of interesting because I walked in the room and the lights clicked off. And I'm like, oh, that was just kind of weird. And then it was just me and my sister in the room for a bit. And then my daughter and her cousin came walking in. And when they walked in, the lights clicked back on. And we were like, oh my God, like, hello, Jonathan. You're like playing tricks with us with the lights. You're here with us, whatever. So it's kind of a funny little story that happened there. But that night was the night that I had the dream. And so the dream is I was at a swim meet and so the swim meet was on one side was the stands where like the spectators were watching the meet, and on the other side of the pool was like this kind of like how would I describe this, like platform where these yoga mats were stacked up, and you weren't supposed to be watching there, but for some reason I decided I was going to watch from there. And so I was sitting on top of these yoga mats, and then all of a sudden the yoga mats slid, and I slid with the mats, all the mats and myself, into the pool in the middle of an event. And it was like, I want to say it was like a league meet or something like that, where people were trying to get their cuts for state. And I ruined the whole meet, and they were going to have to do the event again. And people were so mad at me, like, what was I doing over there? And now their kid is not going to be able to go to state and not get a scholarship and blah, blah, blah. And then I had to go sit in the stands, and I was soaking wet, and I was so upset. And then all of a sudden, you can hear like the door is opening to the pool. And so I turned back to look, and this person like walks in the door, and it's this young guy. In my mind, I would say like 25 to 30 in my mind. And the first thing that you notice about this person is that has such a big smile. It's like the smile radiates sunshine, and just like everything's going to be okay. And it just felt like a breath of fresh air. And like it was something different. It wasn't just like a person. This was like a different entity of a sort. And then this person started like walking towards me, and just was kind of like bounding down the steps, and then started laughing at me. And like, oh my God, I can't even believe you just did that. Like, that is just so ridiculous and hilarious. And whereas like everyone had been like mad and disgusted at me, suddenly they were like, oh, well, maybe if this guy thinks it's funny, maybe it was a little bit funny. Like, all right, well, we'll lighten up a bit, guess things happen, whatever. And so this person sat down next to me and was, well, from reading the book, and I've talked about this many times, in my opinion, looks just like you, like has these big, beautiful eyes that, in my opinion, are very soothing and caring, and just made me feel like, oh, everything's going to be okay. And you asked me how I was doing, and I said I was doing okay. And I'm going to refer to this person as you from now on instead of the man, because now in my mind, I do think of you two as like the same. Although at the time when I had the dream, obviously I did not know you existed. You were just a figment of my imagination, which that still could be true, but I choose not to think that. But anyways, we started talking about God, and you told me that I needed to go to church more. And I said, well, I do go to church. I go to church all the time. And you're like, yeah, but you don't really go to church. I'm like, yeah, I do. I really go to church. And he said, well, you're there and you're kind of sitting there and you're sort of listening, but, really you're not paying attention. I'm like, well, that is possible. And he said that I really need to start listening to God and not just hearing the words, but not just like, I'm sure you've done this before too. Like you hear them, but and you think in the moment, oh, that's kind of cool, but you don't really do anything about it. It's not like you like go out in this world and do something that God told you to do. You just think, oh, that was nice. That was a positive message. Moving on. But you're like, you have to actually do the things that God tells you to do. And that was probably like the most important thing of the whole thing that you told me. It would take me a long time to be able to do that, but that was probably the most important, most impactful long-term thing. But you also said I had been looking for things to change me. Like I had been trying to find a therapist that would help me from the outside. I was looking for art therapy and music therapy that were going to come to me and do something to change me. Whereas you were saying that it was going to be working from the inside out, things such as being a good friend, not having good friends, but being a good friend. Even though there were friends that were checking on me and in my life, I needed to do the same for them. Even though I was in a bad place, I needed to call them up and say, hey, how are you doing? Or do random acts of kindness, or just be an honest person. So, they weren't so specific, but I understood that I was going to have to make changes inside myself in order for myself to heal from this experience. So, eventually, I feel like we talked for like maybe a half an hour, and then he thought like I understood what you were saying. So he said, all right, well, I think you're going to be okay. I think you get it. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. And was the last thing you said to me, you're going to be fine. And you patted my knee. And I woke up and I just said, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. Because for some reason, I just believed it. Like all the other things, I just chose to believe it. But then I had to start doing the hard work. I had to actually do the things that were expected from me. And sometimes I would be able to, and sometimes I wouldn't be able to. And it was also hard because my daughter and my husband hadn't experienced that. And in a way, they didn't want me to get better because they didn't want to be alone at the bottom of the hole by themselves. It's not that they didn't want me to heal, but they didn't want me to leave them. So that made it difficult at times too. So that was really, really amazing. That was almost unbelievable. And I'm just
That's
curious, how does that make you
amazing.
feel?
That makes me feel like my life changed, like in a way of like you can do anything and everything that you're thinking is real. And just be it. Like I used to think that I could change the world and all these big things, and I am in like ways, and I want, but like just hearing that, like changing your experience and life and like that way, and like thinking of me is like makes me think, wow, we are all connected, you know?
Well, the
Like just in the
interesting
same.
thing, and I'll probably get into this more later, but it's like, to me, you are the same person. Like that was in my dream. I mean, you might not always be saying the same things, but um, and of course, there are days where you say things that annoy me, to be quite honest, or
I
make me
know,
mad or
same,
do
annoys me
something.
too. I wake up listening to
But
myself and I'm like, oh my gosh.
but
Like,
honestly, like I mean, I do think that you have like that person that came to be in the dream is inside of you, and you have the same ability to make impact in real life people
mm,
than you as you did in my dream. So I just think it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. You've been through a lot. This even like the last couple of years. it's going to possibly be a slow process, but like I think it definitely absolutely can happen, and I think it will happen. But
Me too.
like it's like I'm talking to my dream that changed my life, and
Good.
it's incredible.
So
It's very incredible.
I'm helping you
So
too. That's good because you're helping me a lot
thank
right
you.
now. No problem.
Thanks. That's how the world works, right?
Yeah,
We help each other.
and it doesn't mean
So the
we'll
next,
make mistakes sometimes, right?
but
Just
of course, I mean we're human,
we're
of
human,
course.
but let's remember what we're
I mean we're
talking about.
almost. It,
You know.
I feel. I mean we're like meant to come here to learn lessons, and that's how we become
Yeah.
stronger people. And it's just hard to get through. I mean nobody wants to go through this,
It's just
but
spirituality is beautiful because it heals
it's
so much.
it's amazing. It is
It's
absolutely
amazing.
amazing,
And it proves that
and
like
I'm
the skin is temporary. Like what's in that we
yes.
don't even see in ourselves sometimes, but other people can.
Yes. And it's interesting that you say that because the next experience was me feeling what it was like to just be a soul and not be a body. Because, like, for me, that was like a very hard concept. Like, what is a soul? Like, how are we just souls, not bodies? Like, I don't understand that. Like, that's just like, really like you hear that all the time, but what does that mean and how does that feel like? And how is my son with me when he's not really with me? So the next one that I had was I was up really late reading this book, and I think it was called like The Hand in the Mirror. And this woman, she just experiences all these like even crazier things than I had ever experienced. And I was like a little bit like, wow, I thought mine were really good, but these are like even better. And she says in the book, she says, you have to specifically ask your spirit guides, God, past loved ones, for these experiences, and and you have to be very specific about it. I had been asking for signs, but I would just say, I need a sign. I wouldn't get specific about it. So that night I was like, all right, Jonathan, just give it to me. I mean, I want to really I want to just be like, wow. I want to wake up and just be like, wow. And I'm like, I'm ready for it. And I remember it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I almost felt like, why even bother go to sleep? Because, you're going to have to get up in a half an hour or an hour or something like that. But I'm like, well, at least I'll just lay here and relax. And even if I don't actually like sleep, I'll be a little bit rested. So I was
Mm-hmm.
laying there, and I remember I was looking at my dresser, and I was just laying there, and all of a sudden I was not in my bed. I mean, in reality, I was in my bed, but I had an out of body experience where my soul had traveled to a different place. I was laying in the grass someplace, and I was just like so shocked. It was like instantaneous. I was in my bed, then I was in the grass, and I was laying there, and it was, I could feel like dew on my face. I could feel like how the air feels in the morning, kind of dampish, and the sun was starting to rise, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And I was feeling the ground, like, "Am I like what? How could I have done this?" I actually thought that I had been drugged or that I had slept walk or something like that. I really thought that I was like in somebody's backyard, that I had like traveled somehow, like I had like fallen asleep and then I slept walk to the neighbor's house or something like that. So I got up and I was thinking to myself, like, I don't even know how I'm going to get home. I don't even like really know where I am. I just want to tell you that I did not touch my son's picture. It just fell off the bookshelf. So another sign. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking.
No,
So
I
he's
believe
definitely being very active right now.
you.
Um,
Yeah.
anyways, getting back to the story. Um, okay, so I was trying to figure out like how I was going to get home. I was didn't know where I was, but I was not. I was, physically obviously in my bed, but in my mind, since I was having this out of body experience, I thought it was somehow like at a neighbor's house or something like that that I'd sleptwalk. And as I was standing there and just kind of like wondering, like, what am I going to do? Um, I started falling, and I was like falling towards the ground, and I was on cement. So I felt like, oh my gosh, this is really going to hurt. But I actually went straight through the cement, like it was butter. And, um, like I was just molecules. I wasn't an actual body. I was like just something that like blended with the earth or whatever. And then I was floating through this luminescent light that was like a whitish purple color. I didn't have a body. I was just this energy. But the strange thing is, I felt like I had a body. I felt like myself. I had my thoughts and like my personality. And like I felt like a real person, except I did not have a body at this portion. And then I saw my son's eyes looking at me, and we didn't actually talk, but we kind of communicated. And he said, this is how you have a soul. This is what it feels like to just be a soul. And I said, oh, okay, that's so cool. This is I'm a soul right now. I'm having like my soul left the body, and this is what it feels like, except I'm now able to go back into my body and you cannot go back in your body. And so, as soon as I kind of realized that, then I was back in my body, back in bed. And I like that was just actually like astonishing. I was astonished by that. And um, that made me realize that, because I would always not really be able to understand. I mean, I understood like how my son could be around me, but I don't see him. But now I understood that he really is actually always around me, and that's how it would be like. So then I started to like actually like feel his presence, not in a physical way, but in like I would actually just kind of like feel him with me. And that was obviously very helpful because um, who wouldn't feel better to be able to actually feel their son who passed away actually with them in a different way, but to actually feel their presence. So those were like the three really big things that happened um, during the first year, where that was like the hardest. And then I do go on to describe a couple of little things that like happened, little God winks and things like that. And we ended up moving, and I would experience things by living in my mom's condo. We ended up buying a different house that we had to restore, like this historic farmhouse. Lots of other information in the book, but I end the book with making it through the first year, and that was like my milestone. I did not think that I would be able to survive this. I did not think it was possible, but through all the tools that were given to me by God and spirits and spirit guides and angels. I had a little backpack with me, and I knew I was going to be able to move forward. I had a long way to go, but considering I did not think I was going to be able to live, and I had my own kind of suicidal thoughts. The fact that I made it that far a year, that was like a big deal to me. So, unfortunately, God told me at that point, it's like, all right, well, you made it, and now you have your tools and
Yeah.
figure it out. And that's what I did for a while. So then that would take us to finding you on TikTok. So I just go straight into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was not very active on TikTok. I just had a username. I didn't really do much on there. I just would occasionally, out of boredom, go on there and kind of scroll a little bit. I didn't follow barely any people. I might have been following 20 people. Nobody followed me. I had no intentions of ever getting involved in TikTok. But I'm scrolling through and I see this person that looks like, I mean, it's you, and you look like the person that's from my dream. And I have this immediate thought, oh my God, it's like the guy from my dream. And then because you were going viral that day, that was Mandy, you just kept showing up and showing up and showing up. And I'd be like, oh my God, yeah, he really does look like the guy from my dream. And oh my God, it's really crazy. And then I went to your account and I was going through the account and be like, oh my God, that's how he walks. So he's walking down the stairs and, oh, this one, that's how his hair was in that one. And oh my God, that one, that's the way he was looking at me when he's talking at me. And this is crazy. How is it even possible? And like I said, I mean, I do communicate with my son. It's in a weird way and hard for me to describe. But he was like, yeah, Mom, that's the guy. I'm like, fine, okay, I'll just follow him. And that experience was when I just shot out of the black hole like a rocket. It was okay, if God can put people that I don't know that exist in my dream, absolutely anything is possible in this world. Absolutely anything is possible. And for sure there is a God, and for sure there is a heaven, and for sure my son is okay. So for sure I can just move on with my life. And it was just I was just swooped right out of that hole and placed in a meadow, a sunshiny meadow. And that is how I would describe the next couple of months. And because I was out of the dark hole, I just started being a happier person. I would be smiling during the day. I would be joking around with people, just enjoying my life essentially. And one of my biggest problems that I'd had was my relationship with my daughter. We had a hostile relationship and we'd been through a lot. She'd been through her own experiences and a lot of emotions, and we were both triggered all the time by each other. And I was really super happy. But she didn't really notice this. But then we had a trip to Savannah. I had to drive her back to college, and it was 16 hours. And inevitably, we got into a huge fight and went in the hotel. And I was so mad and upset. I was like, I don't even want to deal with her. I'll go have fun by myself. I was like, what the heck? I'm going to call her, tell her she has to get over here. So when I called her, whereas normally I would have been all right, I'm your mom and you are going to come to the hotel and spend time with me because I didn't just drive down to Savannah to just spend the weekend by myself. That would have been my normal way of talking to her. But because I just watched the live and I was in a good mood, I'm like, you know what? Just, forget it. Just, we'll have fun. We'll go have happy hour, have a glass of wine, and it'll be fine. And I threw her off like so far that she was like, all right, I guess I can go have a glass of wine. And then I went downstairs to the lobby, and I met these people, and we were like hanging out and just joking around. And she got there, and she was just like, "Who is this person? Like, who is this? Is this my mom actually joking around with people and talking to people? Like, I don't even know who this alien is." And so I'm like, "Oh, have fun. Come on, have a drink, whatever." And we ended up having like a decent time. She was still very skeptical of me, like looking at me like, how did this scowling, angry, depressed person turn into this person? And that was kind of like the start of our better relationship. It'd be a few months later that she would then send me a text and say that she was so happy that she was talking to me and that things were getting better. And I didn't think that that was ever going to happen. Like, I've been through like 8 years of screaming. So when she sent me that text, I was like crying all day long. I was just like, oh my God, she wants to
Wow.
talk to me. For
And it was
real.
all through spiritual strength. Like before I got famous, I would
Yeah.
make, look people in the eye as deep as I can and try to find
Yeah.
that spark,
Exactly.
you know?
I did not realize that I had been blocking emotions. I thought that I had been pretty good about like expressing my sadness or feeling pain or whatever. But of course, when you go through something that traumatic, your brain just isn't going to really be able to handle all of that. So of course, it's going
No.
to like shut down a bit. But I realized that when you shut down like painful, traumatic experiences, you also block good feelings too. You block love and happiness. My husband and I had really grieved very differently, and he wanted to be at the bottom of the dark hole. And when I got out of the dark hole, I was like so happy. I'm like, I'm having a great life here. Like, if you want to be on the dark hole, fine, but I'm not going to be in the dark hole anymore. I'm done with that. And then I started feeling like, oh my God, like I need to help him. And, um, I want him out of the dark hole.
Of
And
course.
so that was extremely difficult, for me to do that. But like I found the desire to want to work on that, based on the fact that I like kind of like rediscovered like feelings. But in fact, that's like when I started working on my relationship with my husband. And yeah, it's
25
here
years.
25 in October. So,
Nice.
right.
No, I think it's just like me being myself, like, and then people can relate to like you just being like authentic as you can, and also fighting through things like emotions. Like, there's things that happen in my life that kind of brought me down. I try to stay positive about it all, but but I did. I stayed positive, and I built something that's pretty cool, and still working for. I have a lot to work on still, but I'm just happy I can help
Yeah.
people. That's my
Well, I mean,
biggest.
I have to say, I mean, you've been,
Yeah, I haven't lost, knock on wood, but I haven't lost anyone very important to me yet, and I think that's gonna be a big test to my faith. I'm very nervous for that, because I haven't lost. I lost my grandpa, but I wasn't close to my grandpa. Um, my grandma, when she, that's gonna hurt a lot. I tell myself I'll try not to think about it, um, but it's gonna be tough. But there's also a beauty in the hurt. Like, there's a
yes,
beauty in all of it, and you have to
yeah,
take
I
that,
agree.
right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
That's life,
Um, it's kind
you
of like a
know?
dark beauty, sort of like
Yeah.
it's like a darker kind of beauty, but there is a beauty in it. I agree with you.
Because if you can shine a
Um,
light on the dark, it can like just be so much um, you're such a better person. Like you just
Yeah,
grow
it makes definitely makes you a stronger person,
stronger.
um but I do I that's one thing I do is I that was one of my exercises. Like I just didn't believe that there was anything beautiful in this world, and I I started doing photography because it'd be like, all right, you need to find something beautiful, take a picture of it, and then tell yourself that there is beauty in this world. But that was like something else. It's like
That's cool.
that's another thing. But one of the things I'd done was that I, because I was at the gym when my son died, I never went back to the gym, and I kept my membership that whole time, but I never went to the gym. And I would do like active things. It's not like I would never do anything, but I would have to like drive around that place. I wouldn't actually be able to pass it, and I wouldn't be able to actually be in the facility. But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And so I went there and I sat in the parking lot and I had a good cry. And then I went in the gym and I had like this little workout. And I think I went for like literally like 50 days in a row. And um, it wasn't so much about like working out. It was just more about like facing a fear, and also just being able to realize I had been it was like a blockage in my life. You know, I can't go to the gym. I can't do that, and I can't pass by the gym, and I have to avoid it. But once I did that, it was sort of over, and I like had a space inside of myself that could be filled with something better than fear.
Hmm.
So, but that started because you went to rehab, and then I had some other hurdles that I had to do after that. But that was like the start of me moving some big things in my life. Was actually when you went to rehab.
After this podcast, like I feel how much I'm growing right now, so I thank you so much for that. Um, and I hope I'm helping you as well. But I'm going to try to book another podcast right away because I love doing this. This is actually really good. Really
That's
good.
awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
Um, I
thanks.
definitely think it's part of your future. And like you said, like you're just learning how to do this. But I mean, I believe in you. I think you can do it. And I think it's going to work out.
I thank you so much for sharing your story because I think other people are going to see this and relate or think it's cool as well. And you just helped me a lot. It's just beautiful. Everything going on. And we'll see what the future holds. And that means even
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
afterlife, everything, you
Yeah,
know? So it's beautiful.
definitely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
To me, like, because I had a period where I would be like needing proof, like, does that solidify things for you, or do you still kind of feel like, well, that is this really too crazy, or are you like, yeah, this
Yeah, that's a good
happened?
question. It's like, it solidifies it. And the more I try not to solidify it, the worse, like, everyone around me feels. The worst things happen. But when I just be myself and accept that there's me and a lot of people doing God's work, that makes me think, just go for it, you know?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I
And there's gonna be
mean, I kind
doubts.
of feel like
That's fine.
maybe those are final words. Just go for it.
Just go for it. All right.
I have
Um,
to tell myself that too. As a matter of fact, I mean, I'm hoping I'm not done with this world. Just go for it.
just go for it. Honestly, like whatever you think is good, go for it. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? There's nothing to lose on that end. And you can make miracles happen as well. That's what I'm learning. Like miracles. It's pretty crazy.
Dream big and make it happen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Unless you want to
Yeah.
talk, that's it.
I
Thank
think you're
you
pretty good. Thank
so
you.
freaking much.
This was like really like unbelievable. And um I hope that other people get a lot of out of it too, but at the very least, I did and you did, and um that's all we can ask for. So thank you so much.